On the afternoon of May 17, 1856, the Starling Wagon Train Party approached a small drain along their route toward Fort Fraser. The party stopped to water their mules, at which point the men, for the most part, began to rest themselves. Not far away from this point was a militia campground near Moore's Lake. At one point during the, while they were stopped, young James Starling walked away from the train some distance. As he did so, he spied a Seminole in his vicinity. He called out to his father and comrades, "Who is that strange man over there?"
Who's that strange man over there?
At which the Seminoles opened fire. James Starling was immediately hit. His father, Levi Starling, ran to him, helped him to one of the wagons. But in doing so, he himself was mortally injured. At this point now, there were only 4 men left with the train. Again, these 3 wagons were hitched with mules at the time. At this point, only 3 men were armed and able to continue resistance. These included Tom Hatfield, Alfred Henson, Mr. Roach, and Jim, who was at this point unarmed. At length, the firing continued. Mr. Roach's weapon began to malfunction. He began snapping the caps, unable to fire it. Mr. Roach is being interpreted on the right flank of the table. Mr. Roach was shot dead by one of the Seminoles while his weapon was malfunctioning. Jim took up his weapon and fired it, wounding one of the Seminoles, and later left a bullet hole on the scene. At this point, Hatfield and Henson called on Jim to run from the scene.
Jim, run to the camp, bring back the militia!
Jim then fled the scene, originally on horseback. He rode to the militia camp at Moore's Lake to retrieve help for the rest of the train. Hatfield and Henson now remained alone on the scene against the several Seminole attackers. As the Seminoles grew bolder, Hatfield and Henson held out as best they could, although at length, Henson was wounded in the thigh. Henson fled the scene. Hatfield now remained alone on the spot against the several Seminoles. Hatfield quickly fled under one of the wagons to take cover. En route, he gathered weapons until he had several arms underneath the wagon with him. Under the cover of the wagon, Hatfield began to return fire. As the Seminoles kept their heads down, he fled for help himself, barely managing to escape the scene. Hatfield was grazed by several Indian bullets as he made his escape. In the original incident, Hatfield stepped up between 2 of the lead mules of one of the wagons. He cut one of the mules from the traces and rode it from the spot. The Seminoles quickly took possession of the scene. They dispatched the boy, James Starling, who was in the wagon. They then pulled the wagon sheets off of the wagon itself and loaded it with some of the whiskey and other goods that were in the wagon. They also gathered the weapons of those that had been killed on the spot and what ammunition they had on their persons. These warriors were raiders from South Florida. They were under the command of Asen Tostanugi. The party that ambushed the Starling Wagon Train only a few days before had attacked the Bradley house in today's Pasco County, killing some of Mr. Bradley's children. After stripping the train of what they required, the Seminoles then fled into the woods. They immediately used the swamps and hammocks in the vicinity of Simmons Hammock and Pemberton Creek to mask their movements and made their escape. Not long after the Seminoles left the scene, some of the militiamen from Moore's Lake approached, deployed, and then retook the wagon train.
Get up on the wagon train. I want you to
Despite their cautious approach and searching the scene, they were unable to locate the Seminoles. With it evident that the Seminoles had withdrawn and were no longer interested in fighting, the troops then combed the ground. They found Mr. Roach and the two Starlings dead on the ground. For the most part, the wagon teams had not been molested. The animals had not been taken to their traces. One of the men found a blood trail, evidence that at least one of the Seminoles had been hit during the skirmish. In the days following this particular engagement, while small, the regular mail service from Tampa into the interior was suspended until more militia troops could be spared to conduct them safely through the countryside. This particular engagement was typical of the partisan nature of the Third Seminole War, and was in fact the last Seminole Indian War engagement in Hillsborough County's history. The two Starlings and Mr. Roach were evidently interred near the campground at Moore's Lake shortly after the skirmish. Although in later years, the widow of Levi Starling had the bodies of her son and her husband taken up and reburied near present-day Dover, here in Hillsborough County. This concludes our demonstration of the Starling Wagon Train fight.